It's the Packet Thrower! Welcome to the channel! In this video, we're going to have a look at how we can customize our Linux images for VIRL, and this will be handy for making more in-depth automation labs. To start things off, I built a simple Ubuntu server in VMware Workstation, and what we're going to do is I'm just going to walk through some of the customizations that we need to do, and then we'll look at how we can do this in a more efficient manner. So first of all, we want to make sure that our apt is up to date, so we're just going to go ahead and let that run. And then we're going to install some packages that we know we need. So we're going to need Python 3. We're going to need pip. And then if you remember from the last video, I mentioned that VIRL uses Cloud Init for its configuration. So we want to make sure that is installed. Likewise, if we want anything else, like say Docker, we can go ahead and throw that in there too. And we can finish off that configuration by making sure it's enabled. And started. We can also make sure our user is added to the Docker group, so we don't need to sudo everything. So we can do user mod. Oop, can't type right now. AG Docker. So basically what I did there is just added the Docker group to the current user. And we should be able to run a Docker run hello world. Oop, need to log back in again. Now if we try and run that again, you can see Docker is working fine on this image. So now we can do our other customizations, like we'll upgrade pip. Oops. And we'll install some packages. So we'll say Ansible, no near. Let's say Meraki for some packages. We'll do our IPython again. Yeah, that should be good enough for this example. Okay, that's done. What else can I need here? Yeah, we'll also throw in Git. Oh, I already have that. Must have been playing around earlier. Alright, so we now have a system that works pretty well. So the main thing is that I installed Cloud Init and our Python stuff, and then I did our customizations. So now the last thing I need to do is VIRL uses a serial console connection for controlling everything there, and we need to update grub so that it's happy with that. So if I have a look at grub, what I need to change is... Then what we'll do is we will clean this up and then put in something like console tty1 console tt cannot type tty50. So at this point, I can take this box, shut it down, grab the hard drive file, and upload that to VIRL to use. But what I'm going to show you is a bit more of an automated way of doing this using what's called a provisioner. A provisioner is a DevOps tool that helps you create your infrastructure, and then you would use typically a tool like Ansible or whatnot to actually configure things. So what I'm going to do is I am going to show you a tool called Vagrant. And Vagrant is made by a company called HashiCorp, who makes other provisioning tools such as Terraform and such that are beyond what we're talking about in this course. So what you would do is you would download it for your environment. For example, I'm using Windows for this there, but I could also do this for my Mac or Linux. Now because Vagrant's a provisioner, it needs something to provision against. The easiest thing to use is VirtualBox, which is a free hypervisor. And this will build the environment for us in VirtualBox, and we can take the hard drive and use it as we please. Vagrant does support VMware Workstation, but they charge you for the plugin. It's about $80 US. I do have it in my environment, but to keep things simple, I'm just going to use VirtualBox because that's probably what most of the people who are watching this are going to be using. But the option is there. The files Vagrant uses are called boxes, and these contain the operating system files to build your virtual machines. So the easiest way to see what's available is go over to the Vagrant cloud, and they have a search engine available for the available boxes that you can use. So for example, if I want to, I can type in Ubuntu, and this will show me the official Ubuntu and then some of the other versions. I'm just going to clean this up by typing in official Ubuntu. And we can see the various releases. I am going to stick with the 18.04 version, which is called Ubuntu/Bionic 64. If we click on that, inside here it will tell us how to actually call the box and some more version information. It will also let us know if it supports VMware or VirtualBox and what have you. For our purposes, we can just hop over to the command line. So in my Windows command line, I went to a folder I want to use Vagrant. And all I need to do is type Vagrant, init, and then that box name, which was Ubuntu Bionic 64. What this does is it creates a Vagrant file with the minimum settings needed to start up this box. So we're just going to go ahead and start this up here by typing Vagrant up. And if we watch our VirtualBox, we can see it creating the virtual machine and starting to build it. So because we're not doing anything fancy, it has created the box for us, and we can log in just by going Vagrant SSH, and we have an Ubuntu box that we can play with. Now, one thing we want to note for later, because we need to make some customizations for this to work in VIRL, is we want to look at the grub file. And in this box, the default that we messed with earlier is Quiet Splash. So when I'm making the Vagrant file in a little bit, we're going to want to change this to be our console settings. If we're done with this, we can just type Vagrant and then destroy. And this is going to go ahead and delete that virtual machine for us. So what we'll do is we will clear out that Vagrant file. And then we will start this up again. So Vagrant is a tool that is written in Ruby, and the Vagrant file has a bunch of parameters that we can use to customize our experience here. We don't need to get too deep into this, but basically we have our Vagrant, then we're using version 2, and we're storing this in essentially a variable called config. And then we do nested configuration, so anytime we call config here, we're just calling all this information there as a shortcut. So what we're really saying here is that we are calling a virtual machine box with this name, and then we have a bunch of optional settings that we'll probably talk about it when we get to more advanced things. We can mess with the networking and whatnot, but we don't need to worry about that for VIRL because it's going to take care of the actual configuration for us. But what we can do is add additional provisioners there, so beyond creating the virtual machine, we can handle configuration. We can do things like call Ansible, Chef, Puppet, Salt, or Docker, or we can run some shell commands. I'll probably end up talking about the other provisioners as we make videos on the various other topics, but what we'll do is we'll play with the shell provisioning. All we need to do is uncomment them. And this basic settings will update our app. And this shell script will run a few command lines, which will update apt and then install Apache. It's not especially useful for us. What we're going to do is just make some adjustments. I'm just going to go ahead and add a -y here, just because I like that. And then for our installs, we're going to put more relevant things here for us. So we're going to say install Python 3. Install pip. We need cloud init, and this is so VIRL can configure the server as needed. And then we can jump down into our pip configuration. So we'll go ahead and install a few things. So we'll add in Ansible. We'll add in NetBeatco, which is a SSH component that Ansible uses and is also used for a lot of scripts. I'll add Nonir again. I'm not really planning on using Nonir for anything, but this is handy because it installs a lot of dependencies. We'll also do IPython because everyone loves IPython. And then for some future videos in the VIRL stuff, we're going to go ahead and install Genie and VIRL utilities. We'll talk about those in a little bit. So now we just need to deal with that bootloader so that we have our serial connection working. And we can use sed to fix that. So it's going to be sed-I to do in place. And then it's going to be substituting quiet splash with console equals tty1, console equals tty50, s0. And we need to slash terminate it. And then we need to tell it the file, which is default grub. And then we need to update grub. So we're just going to say update grub like that. And we should be good to go. This tool is called RubyMine. It's made by JetBrains, who makes PyCharm, which is a really good Python editor that I'm sure I'll be using later on in this video series. But this tool has great Vagrant integration. So what we can do is just go Tools and then Vagrant. And then I can just go ahead and say up. And this is going to run the tools directly within our IDE here, so it's going to be a little bit more convenient for us. Because of the updates, it's going to take a little bit of time, so we'll just keep an eye on this and we'll have a look when it's ready. Okay, that's completed. What we can do is we can actually SSH from this tool by going to Start SSH Session. And I can move this to the editor so it's a bit easier to use. And we have our environment. We can make sure that we have things like our Ansible, our IPython, and we're just going to check our bootloader to make sure I didn't break anything. And that actually looks pretty good, so I think we're okay there. So what we need to do now for the VIRL part of this is we just need to go back to Vagrant and stop the VM by using the Vagrant halt command. And if we look here, this will stop running in a second. There we go. So now we're just going to go over to my VIRL. Apparently I have a simulation running. I'm going to stop that. There we go. What we're going to do is we're going to add a subtype. The current version of VIRL is using OpenStack, so it's a bit more particular on how you add nodes. The upcoming version changes that around, but we'll talk about that when the actual release happens. But what we can do is we can go to server, and we want to create a subtype. The subtype is basically what is visible inside the VM Maestro, and we're going to call this developer. From here, we can leave a lot of this the same. We can change things like the icon. There's that cloud init dimension. This is how it gets its configuration. We can change the resources if we want to. We can put this to, say, 4 gigs and 2 CPU. And what we're going to do is we're going to say the default image is server-developer, and the flavor is going to be server-developer. For our purposes, we don't need to change anything else. We're just going to go create. And now we actually need to upload that image, so we're going to go add here and put this to developer. If we want to, we can give this a version. So we can call this 1804, I think it is. This is just informational for us. And then we select the image and then we go create. Okay, now that's done, we can check the flavors. And we just want to make sure that this matches the resources that I said in the subtypes there. Not a huge deal. So now if we go to our VIRL, we still have our topology from when we were playing in the last video. So what I can do is I can go preferences, then under node types I am just going to fetch from server. And then what we're going to do is rather than recreate everything, I'm just going to change the image to be our new developer. And we'll set the flavor as well. Do the same thing for the other one, even though we're kind of focusing on one node, but why not? So now we'll just go ahead and make sure everything's up to date here. We have our configuration ready to go, and our routes and stuff are added, so everything looks fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and power this up. Okay, those are ready to go, so I should be able to connect to my server here. We don't really need to look at the network devices since we looked at them before. And we can see the host name and username and password is set because of the cloud in it. But for one, we have a lot more free space. If you remember before, we only had about 600 megs to work with there. Here we have 7 gigs, so it's much more functional. And then we should also have our tools pre-installed. So Ansible is there ready. Our IPython is there, so we can do 8 times 5 is 40. There we go, Python works. I should be able to import one of those modules. We'll just say nor near. So we have our modules already baked in, so it's ready to go. So we can see that all our customizations are there. If I want to update, it's just a simple matter of updating my Vagrant file and then uploading the hard drive again. At this point, we've introduced Vagrant, which is a handy tool for studying and testing things out. We'll probably be using that a lot for the various videos I make. We have also learned how to customize a VIRL image and get it into our labs. We could probably end the video here. We'll close out our VIRL discussions by learning how to do some automated testing with it in the next video, and I'll see you there.